Hi, I'm Kaleigh-Ann and I'm here with my mom.
Hi, I'm Robin Negrelli.
Today we're going to delve into three sociology topics. We will explore how deviance, conformity, and prejudice are intertwined and evaluate how they impact our culture and society.
Our first topic we will cover today is deviance.
Deviating behavior is defined as behavior that does not conform to the behavior norms in society.
Does deviance imply wrongdoing or have a negative connotation?
Not always. While there are a multitude of instances in which deviating behavior entails acting in a morally wrong or illegal manner, deviating behavior also entails acting against a corrupt system or breaking a harmful cycle.
I believe sanctions would be strongly connected with deviance then.
They are. Sanctions are defined as a type of reward or punishment that reinforces socially expected behavior. So, in instances of deviance, an individual would be punished for acting in a manner that does not meet socially expected behavior, whereas an individual who does not pursue deviating behavior would be rewarded as an incentive to continue his or her patterns of socially tolerated behavior.
Let's discuss some examples. I remember you telling me about the Catholic Church.
That is an excellent example of both positive and negative deviating behavior. The Catholic Church has an ugly history of protecting priests and members of their clergy that have been accused of sexual assault. While the priests committing these acts of sexual assault are ultimately deviating from acceptable behavior by committing these gross acts, it would be deviating from the church's acceptable behavior to report or punish them. The church took extensive measures in order to protect and hide these priests' behavior. Fitzgerald ran a treatment center that treated these priests and later drew the conclusion that rehabilitation was not possible. He even went to the Vatican to address his issues.
So, to recap, the priests that committed these horrific acts would be considered to be deviating from the normal behaviors expected of those a part of the ministry. In addition, those participating in these priests' rehabilitation and providing coverage for the priests and silencing the victims would be deviating from what is acceptable behavior in society. Yet Fitzgerald, in a sense, deviated in a positive manner by actually acknowledging the outlandish ongoings.
Yes, exactly.
I cannot help but think about socially acceptable behaviors in our society that are harmful, and deviating from them would actually be beneficial.
I also immediately thought about the dangers of conformity now that you mention that. Conformity is the urge to oblige by social norms and practices. Individuals change their beliefs, perceptions, and actions to match those of groups to which they are a part of or wish to belong to. One instance in which conformity can be harmful is in cases of police brutality.
Amazing point. I believe police officers may feel pressured to conform to the law enforcement institution they are a part of. These institutions arguably tolerate racial profiling and force of an excessive degree. Uncalled for and extreme violence against the Black community is able to be justified if individuals conform to the beliefs that Black people are likely to commit crimes. Ultimately, this leads to a repeated cycle of police brutality against Blacks and the toleration of it.
Definitely. The article Confessions of a Former Bastard Cop discussed the complexity of police brutality and the corruption of law enforcement. One quote that stuck out to me in the reading was, "That's how I learned that even police leadership hates rats. That's why no one is changing things from the inside. They can't. The structure won't allow it." The author is describing how the gross behavior and misconduct of police officers is tolerated and acceptable within their department and stations. Police officers are encouraged and feel the need to conform to normalized behaviors and practices of their fellow officers and sergeants. If they do not do so, as the author explained, they will face harassment and negative consequences.
It appears as though police officers are pressured to conform to these terrible behaviors, for they are considered to be the norm. If a police officer reported instances of misconduct, would this be an example of deviance?
I believe so. Officers that perhaps go against their training or report a fellow officer for prejudice related actions would be deviating from the tolerated brutality and face negative sanctions.
Wow. So police officers almost abuse their power and force compliance.
Sadly, yes. Compliance can be defined as the change in behavior of an individual to meet a request made by another person. Compliance can be observed within encounters between officers and Black people. Police officers can enact compliance by using threats, force, or violence. If Black individuals do not appear compliant, police officers act on these tactics and put them into action. It is of importance to note that even if Black individuals employ compliance, they are not protected from being harmed by an officer. The article Confessions of a Former Bastard Cop mentioned police officers will threaten you with a more serious crime they can't prove in order to convince you to confess to the lesser crime they really want you for. This example of officers using a threat is a method of getting an individual to comply. As unlawful and unethical as it appears, police officers seemingly use these methods to produce compliance.
Seemingly, police officers that do not abuse compliance measures would be once again deviating from accepted practices. It seems wrong that they are not negatively sanctioned for abusing power such as this, for society should deem this as deviating behavior.
Well, I believe a lot of members in society do see these abuses of power as harmful, deviating behavior from what they believe to be morally right. Consider the Black Lives Matter movement and the numerous protests that occur for a more just law enforcement system.
You mentioned prejudice earlier. I would love to further discuss that.
Prejudice is defined as beliefs that are unlikely to change even when presented with evidence. While prejudice can be harmful and offensive, it is a result of cultural, familial values, and common customs.
The sad fact is that prejudice can lead to discrimination.
I look deeper into discrimination experienced as a result of prejudice. Pew Research Center indicated that the majority of Americans believe minority groups, such as minority racial groups, Muslims, Jews, gays and lesbians, and women, face a form of discrimination in today's society.
The implications that discrimination based on prejudice has on our society at large is absurd when reflected upon.
I completely agree. Women face discrimination and judgment when breaking gender roles, such as being the sole breadwinner. Some women may even conform to being stay at home mothers in order to alleviate discrimination. The LGBTQ community can face discrimination within religious systems for deviating from what their religion deems as appropriate behavior.
In addition, Jewish students are currently facing discrimination and harassment on college campuses from protesters for they believe and that they are not conforming to their beliefs.
Totally. Prejudice is deeply rooted within our country and society. It has manifested in outrageous discrimination and poor treatment of individuals belonging to ethnic and racial minority groups and others who society deems as socially deviant.
I believe that because members of these minorities maintain their own cultures, traditions, and way of living that do not conform to typical societal functioning, discrimination sadly persists.
In conclusion, deviance, conformity, and prejudice are intertwined and impact one another.
Minority groups may feel the need to conform because of experienced prejudice. Individuals who do not conform ultimately deviate. Those who deviate can face prejudice.
There is a great complexity in the relationship between these three topics. All of them have the power to influence the other and maintain a cause and effect relationship while also occurring independently of the other.